things that would not be considered offences. So what I think people need to realise is even those activists, even those people that perhaps belong to the intellectual elite and that were trying to achieve change, were quite constrained by the environment in which they were operating. Again, we see there was no protection for whistleblowers, for people who spoke out against corruption, who tried to speak out against corruption. Those people were either imprisoned or tortured, or they were actually discouraged from doing so in the first place because they knew there was going to be no protection mechanisms for them. So I think this is an issue. Access to information. It's very difficult in Egypt to obtain access to certain official documentation. All these are things that need to be in place if you want to see real change.
Okay, so Hussam Abdullah, how do you know that even with a new government you're going to have a system without corruption?
Oh, transparency to start with. That is why you need to change the constitution. That is why you need to change the laws about civil societies. That is why you need to change the whole concept of policing the country. The police is in the service of people to protect people. It is about full and utter transparency, and that is why really the fight for democracy is a fight for social justice. And the streets were so aware. They said change, freedom and social justice. I want just to come back as well to some of the even legal anomalies. Would you imagine that somebody who earns $1 billion a year pays 20% of tax, and a person who earns 1,000 or 2,000 a year or whatever still pay 20% of tax? It is the only country I know of which is one flat tax rate, regardless of your wealth, regardless of anything at all. That is assuming they put a true record for their wealth. You see, the whole apparatus needs a massive change. And there is a massive desire for a change in Egypt, transparency. But it is about literally demolishing the whole concept is that you improve in society because you please the guys above you, rather than seek the approval of the people below you. You need to constantly be representative democracy and the capability to monitor that by civil societies, by true free press. I mean, there is all sorts of aspects, even about free press. Sometimes some of the newspapers' editors would attack somebody till they get some money, and then they stop attacking them and so on. So you need a different system, a system based on openness, transparency, and a massive power for civil society. You also have asked about why did the West turn a blind eye? Because after all, the Egyptian government was doing their bidding. Their bidding in the area in every aspect, whether that to do with Israel, whether that to do with other Arab states. And as long as Egypt was creating that, between quotation, stability in the area, there was no reason to disturb the boat.
Indeed.
What really I hope they're starting to realize is the fact, actually, that by continuing oppressing the people, you have a total upheaval which is affecting the rest of the Arab world.
Yeah.
And democracy is not only about transparency. What really creates a real peace. Because if people debate the concepts and the different articles, then they will be able to accept one policy or another.
This certainly is an issue which warrants far more discussions, but I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to our guests. Thank you very much for joining us. In Berlin, we have Arwa Hassan. In Dubai, Ibrahim Kayat. And in London, Hussam Abdullah. Thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.
As China undergoes profound changes, competition for jobs becomes a struggle to survive. 2 graduates fresh out of college seek employment in a city of 8 million people. Now entering the real world, the graduates become increasingly desperate and begin to question their college-trained talents. It's a time of hope and frustration for the workforce of the future. Faces of China at this time on Al Jazeera.
Home to a diversity of rare species, Latvia's pristine woodlands are a place of magic. But with a strained economy and an eager market, forests are rapidly perishing, and with them their inhabitants. People and Power investigates how 60% of Latvia's timber ends up on UK shelves with a questionable seal of approval. Latvia's Pulp Fiction, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Standing their ground, protesters prepare for a new day of mass rallies against President Mubarak. Protesters stick to their original demands despite government promises of large pay rises for public workers. Hello, I'm Sami Zaidan and you're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also coming up, let's clean this country up. The authorities free the Google executive they arrested for sparking the uprising. A sign of the chaos. Police look on as prisoners walk free in Egypt. Claiming the Moscow airport bombing, a Chechen rebel leader promises Russia a year of tears. And making progress. North and South Korea hold their first talks since November's deadly shelling. It's 0800 GMT, 10 a.m. in Egypt, where anti-Mubarak protesters are gearing up for another day of mass demonstrations. These are the live pictures coming out of Tahrir Square, or Liberation Square in central Cairo, where the protests are now entering their 3rd week. Well, despite government promises of a 15% pay rise for public employees, protesters are keeping up the pressure on President Mubarak to quit. Opposition groups say the government has given little ground in landmark talks aimed at seeking an end to the crisis. Well, the pro-democracy protests have so far lacked any single leader, but one man has emerged as a hero for many. Wael Ghonaim is a Google executive whose use of social networking sites inspired thousands to take to the streets. He was freed on Monday after being detained for 12 days. Al Jazeera's Imran Khan has his story.
January 27th, and a man is hauled away by what seem to be security services. There's no way of confirming these pictures uploaded onto the internet, but they mark a moment Egypt's leaderless revolution found a hero. Wael Ghonaim is a marketing manager for the internet search engine Google. His arrest sparked a campaign across the internet. Before his incarceration, he used social media sites to encourage and inform Egypt's pro-democracy protesters. For many, he was a digital icon. But then he simply disappeared into cyberspace. A prolific blogger, his writing just went offline. For 12 days, as Egypt roared with demonstrations, his friends, family and followers mounted an internet campaign with one simple message: where's Wael? Then, on the 7th of February, he was released. Egyptian state TV, realizing his role and the huge internet campaign to get him released, made a big deal.
First of all, I send my condolences to all the people who were killed. It was a peaceful revolution. We didn't want to do any damage. Don't focus your cameras on me. I'm not a hero. The real heroes are the youth who are behind this revolution. By God's will, we're going to clean this country of this rubbish.
His words, once on the air, echoed through cyberspace. The news of his release welcomed by many. From Cairo, this man, using the microblogging site Twitter, said, "Welcome back, Wael." Others simply relieved. Andy Carvin wrote, "When you don't see anything but a black scene for 12 days, you keep praying." Even the US State Department spokesman PJ Crowley welcomed the news. Having been released in Egypt today, it's good to see Ghonaim back online. Ghonaim's experience encapsulates the nature of these protests, led by the people but driven by technology.